Religion in the news.
All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Rebel Religion in the News. Jerry O'Lennon, Alfredo Romero, Rock of Life Fellowship, and Pastor Brennan DeForest of Redeemer Lutheran Church. Good morning, man. How are you?
Good morning.
Morning.
Hey, we're going to talk about resolutions that churches need to make their services better, to make their congregation stronger. Before we do that, this is the first time I had a chance to speak with Pastor DeForest since his Christmas Eve service, his Christmas Day service. Did it go well?
Yeah. I mean, always a joy, and just seeing everybody's families and who's in town for the holidays is always a joy.
Now, for me, you judge a service by the length. If it's under an hour, you've hit the home run. You've done it. And last year was one of the best services that I remember ever going to at your service at your church, because it was 48 minutes long. And it's terrible for me to say, but it's the truth. For me, it was beautiful music, a wonderful homily. It was just really nice. Did you break 48 minutes from last year?
I was counting on you to tell me what the timing was, so I missed that. But it was probably right around there. I think my sermon was maybe 100 or 200 words shorter. So
wow.
Yeah.
I say that jokingly. I really do mean it jokingly. I could not go to church this year. Our whole family was sick. We were all. One of my sons had a temperature approaching 103, so it was very dangerous for us. We couldn't go to church, so I felt really bad about that. But we did think about you.
Well, don't think bad of me, but our Christmas service was about an hour and 35 minutes.
No, I don't think badly. No. An hour and 35 is okay.
Oh, there's lots of music at my church. There's
That's
lots
good.
of praise and worship.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had the youth director, the kids director, read the first chapters of Luke to the kids, the Christmas story.
I always like to tell people that if you took the Sermon on the Mount, the greatest sermon by the greatest preacher in the history of the world, and you timed it out, it's 17 minutes.
Wow.
So I thought I'd point that out.
Wow, 17.
That's about how long my preaching is.
You see? There you go.
I go 30 minutes, give or take 5. I can go 28, 29, 30, 31, 33, 34, 35.
That's good, too.
That's
They're
not
all
bad.
good. And the messages are great because I've been to all of these services, and they're all wonderful.
Thank you.
But still, there always is room for improvement. And yesterday, when we spoke with Peter Hansen, the bishop in Chico, we talked about things that parishioners can do for the New Year's resolutions. What about things that churches can do to make their services better and make them, set certain parameters and resolutions? First of all, you have some parameters that you were saying that people suggest we should do. There are 4 items that we should focus on, goals, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, congregations are basically just large groups of parishioners, and so we even refer to the congregation as the body of Christ. So of course we can kind of look at resolutions in the same way as just people can. I like the analogy of the farmer. Farmers, they have to uproot things, they have to trim back things, they have to cultivate things, and they have to plant things. Mm-hmm. And so 4 questions: what do I want to quit doing this year? What do I want to do less of this year? What do I want to do more of this year? And what do I want to start this year?
Okay.
Or if you're into editing, cutting, editing, copying, and writing.
Oh, there
Something
you go.
like that.
That's my language. Let's go right. Here's a list that I saw online, and see if you agree with these, and you might want to add to them. Gain God's vision. Set goals for the new year. It's very generic, but is there anything you can do with that?
Yeah, there's I think every pastor that I know of, when they go into the ministry, the first thing they do is, God, what's your vision for your ministry? What do you want this church to accomplish for you? So you go in with a vision, and then like almost any business, you end up with a mission statement as well. Like we have a vision and a mission statement. But the vision is more important. I believe, every churches can be different. You have to have the same doctrine. You have the same Bible. You can't deviate from the Word of God. But I know a lot of churches have different approaches, but they may have a different vision. Like I know some churches may have a vision to be somebody that serves the needy, and this church has a vision to serve a certain group of women or men, or this church may be the millennial church or the more standard conventional church, or things like that. So they have different visions for the way that God wants them to use that ministry.
Should there be specifics? Like, for example, if you're saying I'm going to get into good shape, and you say I'm going to run a half a mile a day, and then I'm going to go to another tenth of a mile, and then I'm going to build up to a certain and reach certain goals. Should you do the same with it pertains to maybe social media? We're gonna put one new message out each week. We're going to do a new video each week that shows what we do. We're going to go knock on 20 doors this week. Next week, we're going to knock on 30 doors. I mean, are those the kind of setting goals by putting specific numbers, an idea that churches should do?
That's the thing about goals, resolutions, whatever you want to call them. They have to be measurable, attainable in some way.
Yeah.
And so there's got to be a way to measure it. And yeah, that'd be great. One new social media post a week, building up to, I don't know, maybe you're doing it 5 times a week.
Right. Well, there's something.
What is that acronym you just did? The measurable.
It's the SMART acronym.
SMART.
I don't know what it all stands for.
Back in my business days, we used to use that SMART thing. It would have to be.
I can't remember the S. M is measurable. A is maybe attainable. R is realistic, and then T is the time factor. So you do need to figure out what time is this going to take.
Yeah, I like that. Gain God's vision. Set realistic goals for the new year. They got to be realistic. You can't go and say, I'm going to run a marathon next week. That's not going to happen. Right.
I got to train.
Right. Find a Bible reading plan. We talk about this every single year. Make a plan to read the Bible within a 1-year period, if it can be done. If it can't be done, that's okay. If it takes you longer, good. That's all right. But how important is that to set a plan for Bible reading? Do we do that with our churches? Do we sit down with our parishioners and say, we need to make a plan for us to read the Bible? Because I think when people have that plan in front of them, they'll go, okay, Pastor DeForest told me I have to read 4 chapters every other day, so I guess I got to do it. I mean, is that something that people should think about doing?
Well, not
churches.
Not having the command from, say, the pastor or somebody up above, but the conversation and the consolation and just talking about it with fellow Christians. If you've got this works in lots of places, an accountability partner of some sort, and it could be, hey, this group is working on just reading. I don't know, if you're a young people, just read the Proverbs. A whole, if you read it, if you read 1 chapter a day, you'll read Proverbs 12 times in a year.
Right. There's 30 of them, 31.
There's 31 chapters. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So find a Bible reading plan. Start a gratitude journal. See, this takes effort, and I think that's one of the things when we're talking about New Year's resolutions to start the year fresh by churches. What churches should be doing is maybe encouraging people to start these type of journals. Is that something that is? Could you imagine yourself trying to go and do something like this to get the people to do these type of things?
Yeah, there's a lot of churches that like to do journaling during the church service. They encourage them to have journals with them, and as the message hits them, or as they feel like they have a revelation from God during the praise and worship or something, they want people to start journaling. Now, my wife, before when she could use her hands, she's, side note, she deals with a neurological disease. But my wife she had journals, boxes of journals that dating back from when she was a teenager, her thoughts, her feelings. And then when we obviously gave our lives to the Lord, it was all about, what's the Lord telling me? What does he want me to do this year? She had just these very intricate, detailed journals. I believe in journaling. Nowadays, I think journaling nowadays means you open up notes on your phone and you start typing in, or speech to text, and everybody's saying, here's an idea from the Lord. Yeah. So if that's your idea of journaling, fine. But I think when you write things down, or if you dictate things down, it's really important to get those feelings. I think obviously down. I think even is it Jeremiah that says make a plan and write it down?
It might very well be.
I think it was Jeremiah said, make a plan and write it down.
Yeah. Journaling is important. I when I speak to new fathers or mothers, they'll ask for advice, or sometimes I just give it to them, whether they ask or not. But I tell them, I say, do a journal of your child's life, do a diary of their lives, and put down details. And I did that for my son, Jeremy, and Ryan both, and their journals are about this thick in paper.
Wow.
And it's fascinating when they go back. And when you write to them like they're 25 years old, not like they're kids, and describe how you and your wife met, how you and your husband met, mention every little detail. Here's what you were wearing. Here was your teacher's name. Here's the first boy that you met as your pal. Here was your little league coach's name was such and such. I don't remember my little league coach's name. I wish I could remember. I wish I could remember certain games where I got a couple of base hits in a little league game, but those are all written down now for my sons, and they have them all there. Their first goal, their first basket, all the little details that happens in their lives. Details are key to make for really good journaling.
I agree.
I've not always been the strongest journaler, and so if you yourself are not the strongest journaler, there's no shame, nothing wrong with getting a journal that's already kind of been set up, or you can you're given prompts and then you can write about those.
Yeah, we have one we just got for a gift recently from my wife. It's like mom's journal, basically, is what it says. And if the first page says, date you were born, where you were born, name of your parents, the next one, your first memory.
Right.
It prompts you to get. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
And the importance of journals, too, is to go back and read them every once in a while. It doesn't do any good if they just collect dust, and to really and the same with home movies. You take all these home movies, and here's another tip for a new because we have a new father approaching here very soon.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
May, end of May.
Congratulations. I
Yeah.
didn't know
Oh, you
that.
didn't know that?
I didn't know.
I was only announced, but during the Christmas shows.
Oh.
Right, that's right. You were off.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
God bless
yeah,
you.
yeah.
That's amazing.
Right,
It'll
right.
be the best thing in your life. All your priorities change. The father bear, the mother bear comes out. And don't get away from my child. You're
It's
so
the
protected.
best.
It's the best being a parent.
There's no bad days. I mean, there's bad
yeah,
days, but
yeah.
as long as your son and your daughter's healthy, it's a great day. We're going to take a
Yeah,
break. We'll continue our discussion. Resolutions for churches to make as they approach the new year. We'll be right back.
More religion in the news.
All right, welcome back. We're talking about New Year's resolutions that churches should make to make their churches better than they already are. I'm with Pastor Brendan DeForest, Redeemer Lutheran Church out of Paradise. He's over on the far end there. If you're watching our podcast, and closest to me is our co-host, Alfredo Romero, the pastor of Rock of Life Fellowship. Managing your finances better. We don't think about churches. Well, I think people do nowadays. I think people realize. Do your parishioners realize that finances are a big part of a church's success?
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's got to be, yeah.
Yeah, in school, when I went to Bible school, there was 3 things that they taught us: how to minister inside the church, how to minister outside the church, and infrastructure, business infrastructure. and this. On a side note, we've been open 10 years. This past year, I know it's been tough for everybody. This will be the very first year we end the year in red.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
It'll be the first time. And I know people are. And how do you manage? It's easy to manage finances because you depend on your parishioners. That's where we don't do a lot of fundraisers or anything. But what happens is when the community hurts, the churches hurt. So we had to learn, okay, what can we do? Like you were saying, what can we stop doing? What can we start doing? What can we continue doing? And that's what we're kind of doing now. We're trying to figure out, we're going to re-budget for the next year. So it's a big part of ministry. Isn't just ministering to people inside and outside the church. It's business. It's learning how to manage a business. And there's a lot. Can we cut back here, cut back there? How's our payroll? And then you've got taxes. People say, oh, churches don't pay taxes. Are you
Yes,
kidding me?
they do.
Our
Yeah.
payroll taxes, employee taxes, workman comp taxes.
Yep,
And I mean,
Liability.
liability,
Oh, my
insurance.
goodness, yeah.
Oh man, churches pay a lot. Trust
Yeah.
me.
Here's another idea how churches can
We're moving on.
do better. Yeah, well, finances that's an uncomfortable one for
I
some.
wanted to go.
Yeah,
On
No,
the
you
other
want-
hand, Redeemer is blessed to be celebrating 100 years this year in
Right.
2025.
Wow.
And there were I think I'm the 10th pastor there or so, and I know from the history there were really lean years and really red years, and then really really good years.
But the
and-
good
and
news
really
is-
good volunteer years.
when you've been around for 100 years, you got a lot of your stuff paid for now. It's like
We do, yeah,
It's
yeah.
like having a house, and you're
Yeah,
like in your house for 30 years, and you say, "Well, the house is 30 years old." Yeah, but it's paid for. Your car is 10 years old. Yeah, but it's paid for.
That's a good point.
Yeah, so yeah, you're doing you
But
guys.
even still at 100 years, I still hear of the people who want to not be as generous with money, I think. And it is the Lord's money,
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And so how can we find ways to be the most generous with it?
Yeah, to get that 10%.
Yeah.
The 10% is what needs to be given.
Yeah. I mean, well,
Yeah.
or what as close as you can get to it, if not more.
That's kind of prescribed. If you're giving less, that's fine. But also consider, can you give more?
Yeah, there's two types, and not to get on this too deep, but there's tithing and offering. I give 10%, but there's offerings as well. I mean, I also give to benevolence to help the people in our church that are struggling, and we'll give to outside, like the Women's Resource Clinic, and we'll give to outside functions as well. And those are offerings, but tithing is people. My old pastor used to go, look, 10% is pretty much the parameter God sets. Start someplace. If it's 2% and the next year 5%, that's kind of how I started. Eventually, you start to understand God's principle, and finances is a big part of it. And I don't want to get too detailed, but it's God's money. He owns it, and I'm very pleased that the Lord says keep 90%. Okay, next subject.
Okay, all right. So we got through that one.
Okay.
Here's one that suggested that. The churches need to do a better job of doing, maybe not do a better job, but something to think about for New Year's resolutions. Listen more. Do churches and pastors listen enough to their parishioners and their needs?
That's a good point. Okay, I'll tell you. First of all, what we tend to do the most is prayer. And when you listen to people's needs, you immediately go to prayer. So we have a prayer team that listens to people. At the end of every service, we invite people to come up and pray with us. We even tell them, look, you don't have to come up and give us any detail. Just come up to us and say, hey, listen, this is what I just need prayer.
It's called an altar call.
Yeah, it's an altar call.
But I know some don't. The Lutheran Church of which I'm a part of doesn't do an altar call, but certainly people are welcome to come to the church's office and come to the pastor's office and say, hey, I got some issues I want to deal with. Maybe you could help me with.
Yeah, we have a prayer basket as well.
Is that something that you think churches don't? So I guess it depends on each church where they do enough where they're saying to encourage people to say, if you've got some issues, you need some help with something, we are here to help you. Yeah. And I'm wondering if we do enough. If does the church do enough of that? Maybe something to think about for all churches.
I'm thinking. I mean, you said it's about listening. How does Romans tells us what faith comes by hearing, and so. I think that's what that's about. The strongest organ for the Christian is the ear, not the mouth. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, all right, okay. So, but would Jesus would Jesus not want to hear somebody's problems?
But I guess, then once what comes in through the ear gets processed in the brain, using the Bible, meditating on it, chewing on it, and then it can come out through the mouth.
We have about 120, 25, 30 people in our church. And so we don't have a big, massive congregation, but there's a business card that we put out on the tables. And I carry the church phone. And if you're on the podcast, here's the church phone. And I have the phone number on there, and I carry it. And I tell people after every sermon, every message, if you guys have questions, call me, text me. So I gave this message Sunday, excuse me. Woof, where's my head? But Sunday, and I told people at the end of the message, hey, give me a call if you have questions about And last night about 6:00, I get a phone call from a member and says, I got questions about your service and your mission and your message about forgiveness and things. I said, I answered your questions. But I think every pastor needs to be accessible, and if your church is big enough, and unfortunately you can't be that accessible. You need to have a team of people that answers a phone or a text. That's the way people communicate. A lot of people don't want to talk to me, but they'll text me. I probably get 6, 7, 8 text messages a week from people just asking questions. And so if you listen nowadays, social media is a way to do it.
We have 2 more here on how New Year's resolutions for churches build more meaningful relationships. Of course, that goes with all of these are really for parishioners as well as churches, but I think it applies to churches as well. Do churches do enough of building meaningful relationships? And how do you do that? Do you do that over a cup of coffee, over maybe a breakfast? Do you do that over having dinner sometime? How do you build up these relationships to make them more meaningful than hello everybody, welcome to the service. Here's the sermon, here's the singing, here's the prayers, and here's the
offering.
Yes, gotta have the offering, especially now, and bingo, and then you shake their hand out the door, and we don't see them again until 7 days later. How do we build those relationships so that kind of thing can be built more? I think that's something that they're talking about.
I'm happy to say that there at Redeemer, It kind of started in the second half of 2024. My wife is heading up some events for women. Myself and some of the other brothers are heading up events for men. So, I mean, we're at least, we're trying.
Well, that's what you're supposed to do.
I continue to do college ministry, and that includes other youth as well.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
I'm sorry. Your connection points begin with your leaders. Your leaders have to go out and start making connections with new people. I probably meet 3 to 4 people a week, men,
Right.
not women, men. My wife does the women, but I'll meet 2 or 3, 4 guys a week that want to have tea or coffee or lunch or something. And we talk about things, but we also like Brendan. Pastor Brendan. Well, we have our men's meetings, our women's meetings. You have to have connection points for people to make them feel like they're part of something, and it's not just Sunday only.
And I love the idea. Coffee, tea, food, whatever it may be. I've had greater success meeting at coffee shops or over lunch than having meetings in my study.
Didn't Jesus do a lot of meetings where there was food involved?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, there was wine, there was food, there was fish, there was loaves, there was
Yeah, good.
I mean, one of the most key things in the Bible is the Last Supper.
Yeah.
He knew what he was doing, all right. Yeah. Final one, expand your horizons. Maybe trying to go into some areas where you're not used to doing, like doing a podcast or a radio show. That's going beyond a horizon that most people don't do.
Good point.
That's kind of a way to reach out that I know you yourself have told me, Pastor Alfredo, that there have been people that have heard this show that have come on board to your church because they've heard this show.
That's true. We've got a couple of families now that came in because they heard the radio show. Or I think we have about, most of the podcasts that we have at least around 100 views. Some have 300 views, some have 50, but I mean, it's a way to get out there. Any little thing helps. Any way you could spread the gospel and get people to understand who God is and how much Jesus loves them. If it's a little bit here and a little bit there, it's about this whole key plan.
There's so many more ways to do it nowadays because of the technology of the times we live in. There's so many different ways to do it.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of people, pastors, I mean, you've probably heard of this. Let me know if you have, but a lot of pastors will say when Christ says, you'll know the end is coming when everyone has basically heard the gospel from the ends of the earth. Social media? Are you kidding me? We can get the gospel out on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, and the gospel is getting out there because there's almost everybody in this world has some type of social media, phone, Wi-Fi, something.
Yeah. And I think to close this segment out and close our show out is that if you're a parishioner and the church is not, your church is maybe not doing some of these things, is maybe a little bit lax or could use a little boost, to make the church a little more exciting, to make it more bigger outreach. I think you need to mention some of these things. And and do church members ever do that with you guys and say, hey, here's some ideas other than me? I do it all the time.
I get ideas from some people. Yeah.
I've used some of your ideas.
I've definitely gotten ideas, but I'm always open to more. So.
Right.
Yes, even my Redeemer members who are listening or who are watching, they can come and talk to me anytime.
Redeemer Lutheran Church, if you're watching the podcast, the service time, 10 o'clock on Sunday morning over at Redeemer Lutheran Church, and also 10 o'clock over at Rock of Life Fellowship as well.
You got it.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Have a great 2025. So long, everybody.